There's a danger in being fat, even more when you grow to be old and fat. And it's even worse when physically you're not old or fat, but spiritually you are. The Bible in 1 Samuel chapter 2 verse 29 shows us a picture of where God refers to, is talking to Eli, and he says that he and his sons had become fat from the sacrifices that were being made to God by his people Israel. And in the same book, in chapter 4 verse 18, it says of how Eli fell down and died because he had grown old and fat. And I realized that the Bible doesn't just say things. Everything that is written in the Bible is for us, to help us, for our instruction. And I realized that you can grow spiritually fat, which leads to being spiritually old and fat, where you become insensitive to the leading of God, and you become lazy, and you become too slow to respond to the leading of God. So that even where you will previously hear God directing you to do a certain thing at a certain time, slowly the voice of God becomes rare, as it talks in, as the word says in the book of 1 Samuel. It becomes rare in your life, and you find that you get to a point where you get less and less sensitive, less and less spiritually active, to the point where everyone else hears God, but you find that sometimes you miss him, or he speaks to you, but you basically do not care. You're very indifferent to the things that are happening around you. We see God eventually having, in this part where we see Eli falling down and dying, it has gotten to the point where the Ark of the Covenant was taken by the enemy. And this, because of this, when he heard this news, he fell down and died. But when you look back, he had been warned severally about what was going to befall his house, but he was too slow to act, or he was just simply ignorant to act. But this was a man of God. This was a person who previously walked with God, and he led the people of Israel as a priest. It's not strange in our times. It's not strange in the lives of believers. It can happen, and easily so, that you become all these things. And God forbid it gets to a point of distraction. When I look at the things that are happening in Kenya right now, we as believers, we cannot afford to sit down and look. We cannot afford to sit down. We cannot afford to just sit down and talk about politics, while as our country is in the brink of breaking down, where we hear of rumors of wars and whatever the case. As a believer, you cannot afford to be ignorant. You cannot afford to switch off the news when they come and go and sleep because you don't want to hear the bad news. We prayed, and God gave us the leader that he saw fit. But at the same time, we have to take our position as believers and pray. Remember the time before God destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah, the bargaining chip for him not to destroy them, when he was talking to his friend Abraham, was righteous people. If only there could be 10 righteous people, then he will not have destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah. The worst part of it all is when us as believers look on and feel helpless while we have, for a country to go down, it takes believers to be quiet. It's not the rest of the people that determine what happens in a nation. It's the righteous people in the land. They're the ones who determine what happens in the land. And imagine what happens when we keep quiet and we sleep, or when we just don't pray, or we just don't care about the politics or what is happening around us. Imagine what happens when I assume as a believer that other people are praying, and so I will not pray. Imagine what happens if I assume that and someone else assumes that I know our pastors are praying. You don't know that. You don't know for sure. Even in the time of Elijah, I think it was Elijah's time, that God was looking for one man to pray. One man. And it doesn't mean that in the nation there were no people to pray, but still God was looking for one man. Remember in Sodom and Gomorrah, Lot was there, but you don't know the condition of anyone else's relationship with God. You don't know. You don't know whether any other person is praying. It is for you to wake up and to pray. When you see those news, kneel down, say a word, pray, fast for our nation, ask God. God is the only one with a solution for our nation. I heard someone saying this morning that these are the same things, some of the things we see in our nation happening right now, happened in 1982 in our nation. And it's so sad that still the same spirit manifests. Remember, when the devil went away from Jesus, he went away until an opportune moment will present itself. Let us remember, we are not fighting against anyone. We are fighting against spirits. We are fighting against forces. We are fighting against something greater than a leader, a political leader. Let us wake up and pray, Kenya. Let's wake up and do something about it. We're not helpless. The last place that a believer should think that they are at is the place of helplessness. You're not helpless. You have the ability to change the outcome of this situation. You have the ability to change things, even just from your prayer closet. May God help us to be awake, not to grow fat, not to grow old spiritually, but to be awake, to be vigilant. The Bible tells us to be sober, to be vigilant. When you're vigilant, you do not sit down and rest. When you're vigilant, you are awake, you're pacing. The Bible tells us not to be ignorant of the devices of the devil. Let us not be ignorant. Let us not just sleep and wait for the outcome. Let's purpose to be aware. Let's purpose to be awake, praying in the day, in the night. Let there be prayer watches. Let us keep watch. Our God is able to do anything, just as long as we invite him to do it. God bless you.